now, one of the biggest cheerleaders for Russia as it threatens to invade a peaceful and sovereign country is the host of the #1 show on Fox News.
Why do I care what's going on in the conflict between Ukraine and Russia? And I'm serious. Why do I care?
I'll tell you why.
And why shouldn't I root for Russia,
Because
which I am?
At this point, NATO exists primarily to torment Vladimir Putin, who, whatever his many faults, has no intention of invading Western Europe. Vladimir Putin does not want Belgium. He just wants to keep his western borders secure.
Wait a second. Why is it disloyal to side with Russia, but loyal to side with Ukraine?
That kind of perspective has created tension for Tucker Carlson in some parts of the Republican establishment, with certain Republican senators supposedly pushing back against Carlson's support for Russia. But Axios reports that Carlson's pro-Russia message has found a home with Republicans facing tough primary challenges, especially those in the House. GOP operatives working in 2022 primary races tell Axios they worry they'll alienate the base if they push to commit American resources to Ukraine or deploy U.S. troops to Eastern Europe. And Carlson knows that, telling Axios, quote, "I really hope that Republican primary voters are ruthless about this and vote out any Republican who believes Ukraine's borders are more important than our borders." Carlson's point of view has also won him positive reviews in the Russian state media, where they have gone out of their way to highlight his work. This is how it looked last month when one of Russia's most watched networks played a clip where Carlson defended Russian anger about NATO involvement in Ukraine. And because of all that glowing coverage he's getting on their state media, the Daily Beast reported just days ago, some of the Kremlin's biggest mouthpieces are openly calling for Putin to be interviewed by none other than Tucker Carlson. David Folkenflik is a media correspondent for NPR, and he joins me now. David, it is extraordinary bedfellows, I guess would be the most euphemistic way of saying this. But let's just first talk about the power of Tucker Carlson. I believe it was the New York Times Magazine that quoted someone saying he doesn't just report the news for American conservatives, he creates it. His echo chamber is not to be underestimated, not just in terms of viewership, David, but the way he can change the tide for otherwise fascistic leaders.
I think that he's playing a role in the absence, particularly of former President Trump deciding whether or not to run in 2024. That is otherwise unparalleled on the conservative right and the sort of pro-Trump wing of the Republican Party, the Trump sympathetic, the Trump agnostic. He is shaping where the Republican Party is going. If you look at lawmakers and whether or not they are attuned to what he has to say, most of them tend to be in the House, that's up for re-election every 2 years, or in the Senate in a cycle up for re-election, or mostly in a primary as a candidate trying to break through to get to the final ballot next November. And, they are loath to alienate him when he can come after them swinging, amplify their rivals in the primary, find ways to undermine them, hit at them in a way that will make donors shy away. Tucker Carlson is really playing a role, and he's explicitly doing for Putin, in a sense, what he's already done for Viktor Orban in Hungary, which is to take somebody who has espoused pretty anti-American ideals and clean them up and say, not only why should I care about what happens to Ukraine, as you heard in that clip that you so presciently played, but also right after he said, why shouldn't I root for Russia? Kind of laying bare the idea that I'm rooting for a vastly more powerful nation that just wants to dominate and repress a neighbor that it once controlled.
Yeah, he's saying explicitly, I'm rooting for Russia. This is a person who took his Fox News program to Hungary and interviewed Viktor Orban, who is an anti-democratic force in Europe. And following that, I believe Jeff Sessions, Mike Pence, both visited Hungary, and CPAC is having a satellite conference in Hungary this year. This is where we talk about the ways in which he can really manipulate the political landscape in a profound way. And it seems like, if we talk about Putin and Russia, this has a measurable effect on the American public. American attitudes, especially in Republican circles, to Vladimir Putin and Russia have changed over the course of the last 5 years, in large part due to the fact that people like Tucker Carlson are saying, I'm backing Russia. And Donald Trump took a much softer, if not friendly attitude towards Vladimir Putin. I guess I wonder, David, not all Republicans are in line. And even Sean Hannity is in sort of the awkward position of basically saying Biden needs to be tougher on Russia. He's taken the sort of semi-traditional hawkish stance that is this sort of hallmark of the Republican Party. Do you think it matters in this day and age that Hannity and Carlson are in fact on different sides, or is the fact that they're both angry about how Biden is responding to this situation, is that enough for the average Fox viewer?
Well, it gives Fox a certain plausibility, saying, look, we have a variety and diversity of anti-Biden views on this channel. Doesn't that show how we support intellectual and foster intellectual debate, right? I think that what Carlson's doing is more influential. I mean, you kind of know either where Hannity is or where he's likely to go. But what you're seeing from Carlson is, in a sense, a way in which he can argue a certain kind of intellectual through line. He was skeptical and critical of the push to go to war in Iraq, and that gives him some credibility in a sense. But what he's really doing is finding and fostering a way to be muscularly anti-Biden and to be consistent with what Trump figures would say without having to support Trump directly. He's kind of one of those anti-Trumpers to the nth degree. And there are echoes of what we heard in the early months of the Trump presidency, and I guess leading up to it, where you had Mike Flynn and others that had ties to Russia, that were sympathetic to it. Jared Kushner wanting to create a hotline in between, the White House and the Kremlin in a way. And, the fact that the president's very brief first national security advisor was paid to attend an RT, that is a Russia TV state-owned network anniversary banquet, and was paid tens of thousands of dollars to attend and to clink glasses 2 seats away from Vladimir Putin, tells you about the proximity there. Well, this sounds awfully similarly cozy. And it doesn't surprise me that, you would see Moscow propagandists embracing this from Fox News, the most widely watched network, Tucker Carlson, the most widely watched show on that network, the most influential show on that network, and the one that casts such fear and such thrall from so many figures, particularly on the House Republican side and those who seek to join congressional ranks.
I think we'll look back on this period as the lull, where the partisan lines hadn't been drawn boldly over this conflict, right? But one almost feels like the tide is coming because precisely of the rhetoric of Tucker Carlson. And I guess I wonder, is it just a matter of time before his pro-Russian, anti-Ukraine rhetoric basically takes over the House Republican Conference? I mean, is this going to become the new partisan fight over Ukraine?
Well, you don't even see Kevin McCarthy like King Canute saying, I can stop the tides. He's not even trying. Right now, I think he's trying to stay atop his fractious caucus and conference long enough to ride the concerns about COVID, the economy, and the Biden administration to victory in the House, really without regard to what the heck kind of agenda he has. He hasn't put any forward. Tucker Carlson here is not, I think, working intellectually through these issues. And there are reasons to be concerned about conflict and the idea of drawing America into that conflict. And there are reasons to question the grounds on which certain claims are made, as reporters for NPR, the AP, and others have done. At the same time, what you're hearing here is a question of, why should we support Russia in this conflict? Russia is far and away the aggressor here. It is not in doubt. The question is the degree to which Americans get involved in trying to resolve or trying to hold off any conflict from occurring. And what you're seeing from Tucker Carlson is the idea of, as a way of attacking the Biden administration's strong desire to sanction the Russians, to impose an economic hit on Russia for this apparently impending aggression. You're seeing Tucker Carlson accusing the Biden administration of some sort of aggression, as though it's intending to go to war, something the administration has ruled out. It's a kind of rhetorical jujitsu, the kind which Carlson all too readily embraces.
The world we now live in, where we have to care equally about what Vladimir Putin wants to do and what Tucker Carlson's response to Vladimir Putin's actions.